Hello there once again. Today, under a topic of control and coordination, we continue further on to the central nervous system, which also in short format is known as the CNS. What is the central nervous system? This system is responsible for the overall coordination and control that takes place inside and outside our body. It is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. The central nervous system, as we stated, functions under the conformation of the brain and spinal cord. The brain, what we'll look at are its functions, the types of brains, and their importance in dealing with control and coordination. We'll have a look at the spinal cord and how it handles the coordination within the body. The central nervous system, if you have a look at the diagram, is broken basically into two categories, the brain and the spinal cord. Let's have a look at the brain. This is the largest coordinating center within our body. It is responsible for the day-to-day activities that takes place within our body and our surrounding. It carries out and handles all processes in response to control and whatever takes place, as it stated earlier, that affects our senses or stimuli. The brain is protected by the skull called the cranium and is surrounded by three membranes called the meninges. The space between these meninges is filled with a fluid cell called the cerebrospinal fluid. This helps to protect it by cushioning it and protecting it from mechanical shocks. So when we have to step over or jump, we have an effect on our brain that jars it or shakes it. So to prevent this kind of shocks, the cerebrospinal fluid basically coats it and helps it. The brain is divided into three parts. First, we have the forebrain, or also termed as the cerebrum. We have the midbrain, and we have the hindbrain. The hindbrain is made up of three different centers called the pons, the cerebellum, and the medulla. Have a look at the diagram that shows you the description as to how this brain is basically divided. The forebrain, the midbrain, and of course the hindbrain. Let's have a look at these three different parts and how they function and why they are important for our nervous system. The forebrain of the cerebrum is the main thinking part of the brain. Without it, we cannot carry out any activity like learning, reasoning with somebody, our personality, memory that we have, and the intelligence that we utilize. It also carries out other processes like thinking, sensations or feelings, what actions we take, and how we move. The cerebrum has different areas for controlling different functions. Such an area for thinking and memory, an area for storage of information that has been received from organs, or an area for sensing or feeling. All these items that we have just looked at, these areas are important because the cerebrum is responsible for all this. The cerebrum also has motor areas that are responsible for receiving impulses and then coordinating these impulses, because it is responsible for interpreting the impulses, where they're coming from, where they're going to, what do they mean, what action should be taken, etc. The midbrain is responsible for controlling reflex movements for the head, the neck, and the backbone. This movement is brought about visually, that is by seeing or by looking at objects, and by auditory, example hearing whether the sound is loud, if it's small, where it came from, and then responding to it. When we see near or distant objects or hear different types of sounds, it is the midbrain that is acting in this process, assisting us to respond or react to it. The hindbrain is divided, as we stated earlier, into three different parts: the pons, the cerebellum, and the medulla. The pons is responsible for the regulation of respiration, be it aerobic or anaerobic. The cerebellum helps in maintaining posture and balance. How we balance, how we walk, how we lift an object, where we place an object, in what position do we actually bend over to control our posture, things like that. The medulla controls all internal actions that are not voluntary. For we don't have to force ourselves to breathe, to sweat, to digest, or for our blood to circulate, or for us to control our heartbeat. These take place naturally and do not have to be forced. There are some actions that are also done, but not voluntarily. Example, when we try to control reflexes like sneezing, coughing, vomiting, all these are not involuntary actions. These are actions that are voluntary. Now let's take a look at the spinal cord. This is a cylindrical structure that begins at the base of the medulla and it extends all the way down to the coccyx or the tail region. It is enclosed by bony structures called vertebrae and is also surrounded by membranes like the meninges. The function of the spinal cord is to coordinate spinal reflexes via the spinal nerves and conduct these impulses to the brain and from the brain. So when any stimuli is detected by a receptor on any part of our body, the impulse is sent via the spinal cord to the brain. This is done by the receptors picking up the impulse and the spinal nerves coordinating and sending them on their way via an impulse system to the brain, which will then later on interpret and relay the message back to the spinal cord for the necessary action to take place. I hope you've enjoyed the presentations. If you'd like to see more presentations, you can always visit us on our website at www.arrangeacademy.com. Furthermore, for a subscription, you could always check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/arrangeacademy. You can subscribe to us also on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/c/arrangejaneacademy. Thank you.